I'm going to tell you something most people spend their entire lives trying to prove wrong. The moment you start explaining yourself, you quietly surrender authority. It feels honest. It feels mature. It feels respectful. But human nature rarely rewards what feels fair. Watch the people who quietly shape every room they enter. They are rarely the loudest. They are rarely the ones defending every decision. They don't rush to justify why they left, why they refused, why they changed their mind, or why they walked away. Everyone else is busy arguing for permission. They simply move. That difference changes everything. Most people believe respect is earned through transparency. Explain your intentions. Defend your choices. Clear up every misunderstanding. Surely people will appreciate your honesty. Yet reality tells a different story. The more you explain, the more people assume they have the right to judge your reasons. Every explanation becomes an invitation for negotiation. Every defense becomes evidence that your confidence depends on their agreement. This is the paradox almost nobody sees. People do not measure your strength by the quality of your arguments. They measure it by how little your direction changes when challenged. Machiavelli understood something that remains painfully true centuries later. Power is not always displayed through force. More often, it is revealed through restraint. The person who can tolerate being misunderstood without rushing to repair every opinion possesses a freedom that cannot easily be manipulated. Look around today's world. Social media trains millions to explain themselves every hour. Every opinion needs a disclaimer. Every decision demands a public defense. Every criticism demands an immediate response. The result is not greater understanding, it is greater dependence. People slowly hand strangers the authority to decide whether their lives make sense. And once someone else becomes the judge of your choices, your independence quietly disappears. Tonight, we are not talking about becoming cold. We are not talking about becoming arrogant. We are talking about recovering something most people surrendered long ago without even noticing. The ability to let your actions speak louder than your explanations. Because the most dangerous person in any room is rarely the one who talks the most. It is the one who no longer feels compelled to convince anyone. Number 1. The invisible contract you never agreed to. Every unnecessary explanation creates an invisible contract. You believe you are simply sharing information. The other person unconsciously hears something very different. They hear a request for approval. Imagine declining an invitation. One person says, "I won't be there." Another spends 3 minutes explaining work, family obligations, traffic, exhaustion, and guilt. Which one sounds like they owns their decision? Which one sounds like they hopes the jury delivers a favorable verdict? The difference is subtle, yet the human brain notices it instantly. Every extra sentence signals uncertainty. Uncertainty invites evaluation. Evaluation invites control. This pattern appears everywhere. An employee apologizes repeatedly before presenting an idea. A business owner overexplains every price increase. A friend spends an hour defending why they ended an unhealthy relationship. None of them realize they are transferring authority to the listener. The conversation quietly shifts from sharing a decision to asking permission. This is how capable people slowly become trapped inside other people's expectations. The more they explain, the more explanations become expected. Soon, silence itself feels like guilt. Machiavelli repeatedly observed that perception often shapes outcomes more than intention. People rarely examine your private motives. They react to what your behavior communicates. Calm certainty communicates independence. Endless justification communicates dependence. This does not mean refusing to communicate. It means understanding the difference between informing and pleading. One comes from confidence. The other comes from fear. The irony is brutal. The people who truly respect you usually need the fewest explanations. The people demanding endless justification are often the very people who benefit most from your uncertainty. Learn to recognize that invisible contract before you sign it again. because the next psychological trap is even harder to detect. Number 2, the trap of defending your reputation. The fastest way to let someone control your emotions is to convince you that every opinion deserves an answer. Most people never notice the moment they fall into this trap. It begins with a small accusation, a rumor, a sarcastic comment, a subtle challenge disguised as curiosity. Your first instinct is to correct the misunderstanding. After all, if people knew the truth, everything would be fine. But that is rarely how human nature works. Every defense extends the conversation. Every correction gives the accusation another audience. Suddenly, you are no longer leading your own story. You are reacting to someone else's script. Look at modern workplaces. One employee quietly produces results. Another spends half the week explaining why a project failed, why an email was misunderstood, why a delay was justified, and why criticism is unfair. Ironically, the second person often becomes associated with the very problems they keep denying. Attention follows repetition, not intention. The more frequently an accusation appears, even in self-defense, the more familiar it becomes. This is why emotionally intelligent leaders choose their battles with ruthless precision. They understand that not every attack deserves resistance. Some accusations collapse under the weight of silence because they never receive the attention they require to survive. Others deserve one calm response followed by decisive action. Nothing more. Machiavelli recognized that reputation is built less by argument than by consistency. People eventually trust the pattern they observe more than the explanation they hear. A person who remains composed under pressure appears stronger than one who wins every debate but loses emotional control. Think about public figures who survive endless criticism. They rarely answer every rumor. They continue building, continue leading, continue producing. Their work slowly replaces the noise. Meanwhile, those obsessed with correcting every opinion become prisoners of public perception. Their energy no longer belongs to their mission. It belongs to their critics. That is the hidden price of defending yourself too often. You stop building your future because you are constantly repairing your past. Real authority begins the moment your actions become a louder witness than your words. But there is an even deeper psychological mechanism behind this. Why do people keep testing confident individuals while endlessly pushing compliant ones? The answer lies in a principle almost everyone misunderstands. Number 3. People test limits before they respect them. Respect rarely begins with admiration. More often, it begins with a test. Not because people are cruel by nature, but because the human mind constantly searches for invisible boundaries. Every relationship starts with silent questions. How much pressure can this person absorb? How many favors will they accept before saying no? How many interruptions will they tolerate? How many jokes at their expense will pass without consequence? These questions are almost never spoken aloud. They appear through behavior. Someone arrives 20 minutes late without apologizing. A coworker takes credit for part of your work. A friend repeatedly contacts you only when they need something. None of these moments seem significant on their own. Yet together they reveal a pattern. Every unanswered test quietly becomes tomorrow's expectation. This is why small compromises often grow into large resentments. People believe respect disappears in dramatic betrayals. In reality, it usually fades through tiny permissions repeated over months or years. Imagine 2 managers. One laughs off every interruption during meetings because they want everyone to feel comfortable. The other calmly pauses the discussion, finishes speaking, then invites questions afterward. Neither raises their voice. Neither humiliates anyone. Yet within weeks, one room becomes chaotic while the other becomes focused. The difference was never personality. It was consistency. Human beings adapt quickly to whatever behavior produces no consequences. Machiavelli understood that order is maintained less by punishment than by predictability. When standards are clear, people adjust before conflict becomes necessary. When standards constantly change, confusion invites opportunism. This principle extends far beyond leadership. It shapes friendships, families, negotiations, and even social media. Every time you abandon your own standard to avoid temporary discomfort, you teach others that your limits are flexible. Eventually, they stop seeing them as limits at all. Yet there is another side to this lesson that many people miss. Strong boundaries are not loud. They do not require dramatic speeches or emotional confrontations. Quiet consistency often carries more weight than visible force. A person who calmly leaves a disrespectful conversation without anger often sends a stronger message than someone who argues for an hour. Actions remove ambiguity. Words often multiply it. The paradox is that genuine confidence rarely needs an audience. It does not perform strength. It practices it repeatedly until others adjust naturally. That is why the most respected individuals often appear surprisingly calm. They are not constantly defending themselves because their behavior already communicates what they will and will not accept. Once people recognize those limits, they stop testing as often. But there is one force capable of destroying even the strongest boundaries if left unchecked. It hides inside nearly every decision you make, and most people mistake it for kindness. Number 4. The quiet cost of wanting everyone comfortable. Few habits drain authority faster than making other people's comfort your responsibility. It begins innocently. You soften every sentence so nobody feels offended. You apologize before expressing disagreement. You postpone difficult conversations because you do not want to disappoint anyone. At first, it feels compassionate. Eventually, it becomes a prison. The strange part is that people quickly adapt to comfort without appreciating the person providing it. What once looked generous soon becomes expected, then demanded. Consider a business leader who refuses to deliver honest feedback because morale might suffer. For a few weeks, everyone feels relaxed. Months later, performance declines, accountability disappears, and resentment quietly spreads. The leader was trying to protect harmony. Instead, they sacrificed clarity. Human nature has always preferred temporary comfort over uncomfortable truth. Yet long-term respect almost always grows from the opposite choice. Machiavelli repeatedly observed that difficult decisions delayed often become more painful than difficult decisions made early. The same principle governs everyday relationships. Every uncomfortable truth you avoid today usually returns later with greater consequences. Think about the person who constantly says yes. They answer every call, accept every invitation, solve every problem. At first, they are praised as reliable. Then something unexpected happens. Their absence becomes the only thing people notice. Their presence was so predictable that it became invisible. This is one of the cruelest paradoxes of human behavior. Unlimited availability slowly destroys perceived value. Scarcity forces attention. Consistency earns trust. But endless accessibility often creates entitlement instead of gratitude. This does not mean becoming distant for the sake of appearance. It means recognizing that your energy is a finite resource, not a public utility. Every unnecessary obligation steals attention from something that genuinely matters. Every promise made out of guilt quietly weakens the promises that truly deserve your commitment. Watch people who naturally command respect. They rarely rush to fill every silence. They do not volunteer for every burden simply to avoid disappointing others. Their decisions may frustrate some people in the moment, but those decisions remain consistent enough to become trusted over time. There is an important distinction between kindness and compliance. Kindness is freely chosen. Compliance is quietly extracted through fear of rejection. From the outside, they often look identical. Inside, they are completely different. One preserves dignity. The other slowly erodes it. The hardest lesson is realizing that disappointing someone does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. Sometimes disappointment is simply the natural consequence of protecting your priorities. The people who genuinely respect you will eventually understand. The people who only valued unlimited access will often disappear. That loss feels painful at first. Later, it feels like freedom. And once you stop organizing your life around avoiding discomfort, you begin to notice something remarkable. The opinions that once controlled you suddenly lose their weight. That is where real independence quietly begins. Number 5. The power of becoming difficult to manipulate. Manipulation rarely begins with force. It begins with prediction. The moment someone knows exactly what will make you feel guilty, anxious, flattered, or afraid, they gain a map to your decisions. Most people believe manipulation requires deception. In reality, it often requires nothing more than consistency. If you always apologize first, someone will wait for your apology. If you always rescue people from the consequences of their choices, someone will eventually stop solving their own problems. If you always sacrifice your priorities to preserve peace, conflict becomes the fastest way to influence you. This is why emotionally disciplined people seem unusually difficult to control. It is not because they are suspicious of everyone. It is because they refuse to let temporary emotions rewrite permanent principles. Imagine two business partners facing the same negotiation. One reacts immediately to pressure, lowers expectations, and keeps adjusting terms to avoid losing the deal. The other listens carefully, asks questions, and is perfectly willing to leave the table if the agreement no longer reflects their values. The difference is not intelligence. It is emotional leverage. The first negotiates from fear. The second negotiates from choice. Human beings instinctively recognize that difference. Machiavelli understood that dependence quietly transfers power. Whoever fears losing the relationship more usually surrenders the stronger position. This principle appears everywhere. Companies afraid of disappointing every customer eventually lose their identity. Leaders desperate to satisfy every employee's struggle to make difficult decisions. Individuals who cannot tolerate rejection become vulnerable to almost any promise of acceptance. The solution is not emotional distance for its own sake. It is emotional ownership. Learn to notice the feeling before obeying it. A compliment does not require immediate loyalty. Criticism does not require immediate defense. Urgency does not always require immediate action. The small pause between stimulus and response is where freedom quietly lives. That pause cannot be purchased. It must be trained. Every time you resist the impulse to explain, to react, or to seek reassurance, you strengthen an internal authority that other people can sense long before they understand it. Over time, something fascinating happens. Manipulative people become less interested in you. Not because they suddenly become kinder, but because predictable rewards disappear. They look elsewhere for easier targets. Meanwhile, healthier relationships become stronger because they no longer depend on guilt, obligation, or emotional pressure. They depend on mutual respect. This is the hidden reward of psychological independence. You spend less energy protecting yourself because fewer people attempt to control you in the first place. And once you experience that freedom, one final lesson becomes impossible to ignore. The strongest form of influence has almost nothing to do with winning arguments. It comes from mastering something far quieter than words. Number 6. The silence that changes every room. Most people are afraid of silence because silence cannot be controlled. The moment a conversation becomes quiet, insecurity rushes in to fill the space. Someone explains too much. Someone apologizes too quickly. Someone laughs to reduce the tension. Someone changes their opinion just to end the discomfort. Very few people simply remain still. Yet stillness has always been one of the rarest forms of strength. Watch an experienced judge before delivering a verdict. Watch a seasoned negotiator after receiving an offer. Watch an executive listening to criticism during a board meeting. Their influence does not come from speaking first. It comes from refusing to let urgency dictate their response. Human beings often mistake immediate reactions for confidence. In reality, the opposite is usually true. The person who reacts instantly is often reacting emotionally. The person who can tolerate uncertainty without rushing to speak is usually thinking several moves ahead. Machiavelli understood that timing frequently outweighs force. A decision made at the right moment carries more authority than 10 decisions made in panic. This is why silence unsettles people who rely on emotional pressure. They expect resistance. They expect excuses. They expect negotiation. Instead, they encounter composure. And composure is difficult to manipulate because it reveals nothing that can easily be used against it. Think about how arguments usually unfold. One harsh comment is answered by another. A misunderstanding becomes a competition. Both people fight to control the narrative. Hours later, neither remembers how the conflict began. They only remember the damage created while trying to win. Now imagine a different response. The accusation arrives. You listen. You ask one thoughtful question, or perhaps you say nothing at all. You leave the room with your dignity intact. Suddenly, the emotional momentum disappears. The other person is left facing their own words instead of feeding on your reaction. This is not avoidance. It is discipline. Silence is valuable only when it serves a purpose. Used wisely, it creates space for observation. It reveals motives hidden beneath emotion. It allows impulsive people to expose themselves without assistance. The strongest individuals understand that every conversation contains information beyond language. Tone, timing, impatience, confidence, hesitation. None of these signals can be noticed if you are too busy preparing your next defense. That is why listening has always been underestimated. It is not passive. It is strategic awareness. Eventually, you reach a point where your presence communicates more than your explanations ever could. You no longer feel obligated to convince every critic, satisfy every expectation, or repair every misunderstanding. Some people will misjudge you. Others will invent stories about you. A few will leave because your boundaries no longer serve their interests. Let them. Respect has never depended on universal approval. It has always depended on internal consistency. The people who truly matter will judge you by the pattern of your character, not by the number of arguments you win. In the end, every life presents the same quiet choice. You can spend your years explaining who you are, or you can spend them becoming someone whose actions no longer require explanation. Which version of yourself will still be standing when every opinion has finally fallen silent?